It's going to be great. Can you see the presentation? Oh dear. Wait a second. Doesn't matter that they can't hear me. Why is it doing this? Hello, and a big welcome to everyone. Sorry for starting a few minutes late. We just had to make sure everyone was in the room, and we're ready for a great session today. So thank you very much. So we're here for a very specific webinar today, specific for those that are interested in our psychology program or studying on that program. I want to understand what our new and fantastic BPS accreditation actually means for them in terms of their career advancement, their options that they have with their degree. So without any further ado, let's go to the panel, because we have an expert panel that are ready to answer that question for you today. We have Dr. Alina Perez, the Program Director of the MSc in Applied Psychology, and also Dr. Ricardo Tejeiro, who's the Director of Studies for the MSc in Applied Psychology as well. My name is Joseph O'Brien. I'll be your moderator for today. I'm a student on the MBA program, entering my dissertation phase this week. So if you have any questions, we're an open panel. Any questions about the student experience, about the psychology program, we're going to reach those questions in about half an hour's time. So you'll see a little box there that allow you to type in any question that you like, and we'll look to field those questions to the good doctors later on about half an hour. So without any further ado, let's meet our wonderful panel for today. Hello, Dr. Perez. Lovely to see you again. Thank you very much for being here, and welcome today.
Hello, thank you for having me. Welcome to everyone today.
Thank you. Now, you are a webinar star for us, having been in our dissertation webinars, teaching our students about what to do at the end of the life cycle, but we're going to move it back a bit and kind of have a general talk about the program that you represent today as well. So thank you very much, Dr. Perez. And Dr. Tejeiro, hello and welcome today, and thank you very much for being here to help us today.
Thank you. It's a pleasure. I hope everyone will have a good time today.
Yes, and the one thing that really interested me was going through your backgrounds a bit, actually, and kind of excited me about the projects and the things that you're doing, the research you're doing. So we see these two pictures here, very different, a guy playing like a game on his phone, and then we have another, woman carrying a big rock on her back, a cartoon. Why have I chosen these two pictures, Ricardo, in terms of describing your research?
Well, to be fully honest, these are pretty old interests of mine in research, but these are the two topics that I dedicated my dissertation, my PhD thesis to. I mean, I have two doctorates, one in psychology, and my thesis was on addiction to video games. And I developed a very successful questionnaire that is, say, the #1 in the world, the most used in the world, and I've dedicated to this topic quite a lot of my research. And the other cartoon that you have there, it's a very nice one, and it's still very relevant, regretfully. And yes, it's a political cartoon, and it's because I did also a doctorate in communication, and I dedicated my thesis to political cartoons and how they contribute to the creation of opinion, which I think it's a very interesting topic.
Yes, I mean, I was absolutely fascinated by your topic as someone who loves playing games and absolutely obsessed by politics and satire. I thought there's a really interesting line of inquiry, and I think a certain lesson for our students today, that with psychology you could certainly take and mine for subjects that you find of personal interest, of serious interest, of societal relevance, and you can then go and research those subjects. So it's a very, very interesting indeed. So let's move on to Alina. Dr. Perez, I've got a couple of pictures here, magnifying glass, looking at a brain, scales of justice. What was your specialization?
Well, my specialization, I have two. My PhD is in clinical psychology, so I am a licensed clinical psychologist in the United States. But my specialty is forensic psychology, hence the scales. So the bulk of my work has been in the treatment and evaluation of offenders, specifically sex offenders, and severely mentally ill individuals within the jail system. But I have all sorts of research interests, and so I do supervise many students in our psychology programs and state participation. And I do enjoy a varying array of the student topics, ranging from anything in the legal system onto clinical psychology topics. So it's all quite interesting.
Lovely. And where are you based at the moment? Because I know it's very sunny where you are, and I'm feeling pretty jealous about that.
In Miami, Florida.
Miami. Bienvenuti a Miami. So, Ricardo, where are you based at the moment?
I'm in Liverpool. You will not see much sun here.
Exactly. You bring the sunshine to Liverpool. So Liverpool, Ricardo teaches on the campus as well. So a nice broad base that we have today. So let's get right into the main topic for today. And I'm going to ask Alina, what does a BPS accreditation then mean? For the university and the MSc in psychology program? You must have been waiting and rubbing your hands for this qualification.
Yes, we were. Well, the university is really proud of being amongst the top 1% in the world, which means that the quality is a key aspect of everything we do. And we have excellent internal processes of quality control and improvement. However, accreditation by the BPS is extraordinarily important because it is the highest seal of quality given by the professional body of the psychologists in the United Kingdom. So, which is obviously external to the university and independent from it. The program is accredited. It means that the BPS has carefully checked and it's certified to meet their existing standards for teaching and learning, assessment, ethics, selection, staffing, leadership, and coordination, resources, and quality management. So it's a very important stamp of approval.
And you mentioned it there, in the UK, if you want to be a clinical psychologist, it's impossible to do that without some kind of accreditation from the BPS. So that's a big point that we'll be discussing today. At the heart of this webinar is kind of looking at the path that you can take with this degree. So let's have a look. And to that question, we're going to talk to Ricardo a bit more about that formal process. So what opportunities then, Ricardo, are there for for prospects from UOL after graduate from the UK, really, mainly from the UK after graduating with one of our now accredited degrees in psychology? What kind of opportunities are available to those UK students?
Well, it really depends on what you want to do with your life, with your career. If we will speak later about this, but psychology is useful for whatever you want to do, either if you're working as a psychologist or as anything else. But focusing on the career as a psychologist, in the UK we have a two-tier system that is, say, managed or supervised by the British Psychological Society. First, you need to follow an accredited program in psychology, in bachelor's in psychology, 3-4 years program, and then you need to follow postgraduate studies in psychology to become whatever type of psychologist you want to become. This postgraduate might be a doctorate. I think we have another slide after this one, which is even better. Which is, you might follow, oops, we almost saw that. That's it, this is the one. And this is what I was saying. On the top left, we have a bachelor in psychology, which must also be accredited by the society. And then you reach what is called a graduate basis for chartered membership, which is that you have basically completed the first step. And then you have a second step that is following an accredited postgraduate, which might be a master's or a doctorate, depending on exactly what you want to do. And at the end, you become a chartered psychologist. Now, if you have already followed an accredited program, bachelor program in psychology, thanks for joining us, but this is not your program.
Right, because you've already qualified to move on to the master's or doctorate.
That's correct. You're already qualified to join the second step. Now, if that's not the case, if, for example, you're an accredited psychologist from a different country, which is your program was not accredited by the BPS, or you have a bachelor in a different degree, I don't know, in history, marketing, or whatever else, you cannot become a professional psychologist unless you complete the 2 steps. So you can either register in a university and complete the 3 or 6 years for the bachelor, or now with this accreditation, you can join our program. You complete this master's in psychology, and then at the end, you will have completed the first step.
So I get this here. So I mean, let's I'll use myself as an example. I've got a degree from Brunel, it's a UK institution. It's in drama and film, so it's not related. So let's say, you know, I've figured out 10 years later that psychology was something I was interested in. I wouldn't qualify for that. So I've got another batch. If I have a bachelor's degree of 2-1, would that qualify me then to then go do a specified master's, or would I still need to do a
No, you cannot do the second step. Let's say the masters, the accredited masters in, I don't know, sports and exercise psychology, to mention one in the screen. You cannot join that masters in any circumstances unless you have followed this accredited bachelor degree, accredited by the BPS. Or now you can also do our masters, complete the masters, and then you can join this second step, this accredited program in sports and exercise psychology.
Okay, so you can get there by doing a bachelor's and a master's, you can get there by doing a bachelor's and a doctoral, you can get there by doing our accredited conversion master's followed by a specialised master's.
That's correct. That's, again, for the UK. This is pretty different in other countries.
Of course, of course. So I understand that as well. So you do the general program, and then you might want to look at occupational psychology and become a clinical psychologist in that regard. And so then you would go to specialize, but you must do something that's BPS accredited before you go and do that master's. So I think
it makes full sense. I mean, you cannot do something specialized as an accredited master's in, I don't know, or a doctorate if you don't know anything about psychology. And the way to check that you know something about psychology is to have completed an accredited program, which might be, again, a bachelor or our master's.
I mean, what I like about this, and I like to stay on this slide because for me this slide is the most important slide that everyone needs to concentrate on in this webinar. It's if they are from the UK. Is that the master's degree is, you know, 3 years, 180 credits. If you have a choice between doing an undergraduate degree first or a master's degree, then wouldn't you say, Ricardo, that your CV is going to look a lot better having the master's degree first, and as you'd have 2 master's degree?
Well,
or does it stop you from doing the doctorate?
No, your CV is going to look a lot better, and also your time and your money are going to look a lot better, because otherwise you will have to follow. You have to think that a bachelor is about 3 to 6 years, whereas our program is around 3 years because it is part-time. So you have plenty of time to work with your family, with your relatives, to do your work, whatever it is, and also in your free time, study and complete the program. So it is faster. And also, again, the amount of hours, as you say, is 180 credits, which is around 1,800 hours, whereas the bachelor is double that time.
I also think a very nice point to make, and maybe I'll switch over to Alina for this for a second, is you have a choice to do an undergraduate in psychology, BSc, or you have a choice to do one of our masters accredited conversion programs. I'm gonna be thinking, well, what kind of students am I going to have to interact on a standard undergraduate program in psychology, and what kind of students am I interacting with on a master's at the University of Liverpool Online? Can you just tell me what the kind of difference is, Alina, between the students we have on these programs and maybe the typical undergraduate students that we have at brick and mortar campuses?
Well, you know, for the graduate programs online, you interact with students from all over the world, and they come from all sorts of backgrounds, mainly adult learners with families, other work commitments, so very similar likely to the students that are joining the program. As opposed to going to the campus-based program, they're going to be, I guess, in the younger age range, perhaps not yet in the workforce, or have those family commitments, those other work commitments. So there's a difference, as well as you're not going to have the opportunity to interact with the vast number of multicultural students that we have in our online programs, because we have the ability to have programs from every corner of the world, because it is an online program. So students do get a lot of interaction with peers from, you can have peers from Africa, peers from the United States, peers from Asia, peers from the UK as well, peers from Canada, all in one setting. So there's a lot more multicultural diversity in the classroom.
If I may something here, for example, right now I'm supervising a student who has just retired after a very long and very successful career in marketing in the UK and in other countries. And as I am supervising him, I'm really learning a lot and enjoying a lot from this person, because he's got a background which is amazing for me. So imagine for the other students in the module,
Yeah.
who will be learning from our contents, but also from the other companion and classmates in the room.
I like that. I mean, what you've touched upon there, and I can attest to the MBA, is a very unique collaborative learning model, where the instructor is an enabler who's learning reciprocally off the students, who are also learning vicariously and reciprocally off each other. So instead of standing at the top of the class, Ricardo doesn't just issue out an assignment and then we individually send assignments back to Ricardo. No, we show our assignments to the rest of the class, we discuss them together, and we use that experience that Alina and Ricardo are alluding to from all over the world, different industries, different ages, to kind of help shape our understanding of the learning outcomes and the work on the program. So I think that is really at the heart of why online programs suit the older professional far more than an undergraduate program or a master's straight out of a brick and mortar campus may do. So that's an interesting distinction to make.
Yeah, so and also if I may say something here again, sorry to interrupt you, no, but I really do think this is really very interesting for everyone, because I mean, one of the assets of our program, and although I know Alina will speak about this later, is that there has been a trend in psychology to focus everything on the Western world, the Western psychology, and the way we see psychology and the way we deal with the body and mind. And this is unique in our program. We have really taken a very, very multicultural, intercultural approach to psychology, considering the different points of view from people from all around the world. And this is something, again, unique in our program. And I really do hope that the students coming from all around the world will feel that we are valuing their values and we are approaching psychology from their point of view. So whatever they get from our program will be directly applicable to their context.
No, I love that. And as we see here, we have, personality models. Surely that's different in different cultures. Criticism and pressure, different in different cultures. How we critically think might be different. Emotional intelligence and the way we look at social cues or social skills might be different in different cultures. And these are the kind of issues that you mine and look at throughout the program as well. Now, it's a competitive landscape. We look at all the universities out there offering psychology degrees. There are 72 institutions in the UK offering the same program. So I'd ask you, Alina, what makes our program unique?
Well, as you already touched on, there's 72 other universities just in the UK that offer an accredited program. However, only 5 are offered fully online, one of which is our MSc Psychology program. Other accredited programs only offer the blended learning or campus-based options. So, yeah, with blended learning and campus-based programs, flexibility can be restricted as the students. They're required to attend most of the classes either on the campus at a specific time. So there's specific requirements of attendance. Students at the University of Liverpool's online program, they're afforded flexibility so that they can complete the course activities and manage themselves within a schedule that works for their family and other professional commitments. There's still course activity deadlines, so there's no deadline. There are deadlines, but a lot of this can be done asynchronous. So you don't have to attend class at a specific hour, a specific day. You can do it around your own schedule and how it works for you. And so, as we touched upon also, the fully online program offers students from all over the world the opportunity to gain an education and gain an accredited education. So that's also of a high value, to the students, because they don't have to relocate to the UK. To study at a top university in an accredited program that can, benefit them in their careers or new careers or, professional lives.
So we have here,
sorry, and Alina touched something very interesting here. Speaking about the 1% of top 1% of universities in the world, but she still said that we have 5 online accredited programs in the UK. And I must highlight that for those who are not familiar with the UK, let's say top universities in the country, and we have something like 100 and something universities, but the top universities are form what they call the Russell Group. which
Yes.
again, Oxford, Cambridge, Manchester, the highest, the top universities. And this one, our program, is the only one from the Russell Group that is
Oh,
accredited. So we can say
okay.
for sure, and not need to be humble here, that this is the best.
Nice. So that is an absolute point. So why are we better than the other 72 institutions? So the choices that there is no online program representing a university in the Russell Group that is actually BPS accredited. So that we are in a world. So basically, there's a choice of one program that ticks all those boxes. So we have the core modules in front of us. Alina, you're the program director. Can you talk through some of the logic of why these topics were created as the module topics?
Well, first, these are all requirements of the BPS. So for a BPS accredited program, we must have specific topics that are introduced in the program and learned by the students. But in a more general sense, if you look at the different topics we have, it's really a full scope of psychology. So for someone, for instance, who comes in without a degree in psychology, this is going to give you the basis that you need to understand the field of psychology. So, for instance, you're getting an introduction in mind, brain, and behavior, which is our intake. And that module spends 12 weeks really touching on the foundations of psychology, the history of psychology, what is psychology, different introductory theories, what can you do in psychology, how does the brain work in conjunction with behavior, how do they relate to one another. So it's really the gateway, I would say, for the topic of psychology and for the discipline. Then you're moving on to more specific topics in the field, like social psychology, personality theory, developmental and cultural issues, learning, cognitive psychology, psychobiology. As you know, our program is a research-based program. So students will get quite a bit of research methodology, obviously culminating in the dissertation. So there is research methodology infused in just about every module of the program aside from the intake. So for instance, in social psychology, you're getting a very basic introduction as well to qualitative research methodology. Data analysis for psychology is our quantitative methods module. So that one is, it strictly focuses on the use of quantitative methodology, statistics for psychology. And so you keep going down the list, and each one of these modules is going to have some research component. However, the overall module is focused on the topic that is related to the title. So for instance, the psychology of learning, you're going to be learning about all types of learning theories in psychology. And at the end, you'll do an experimental project, quite fun, where students get to engage in an experiment. And so it's really the full gamut of topics that someone who is going into the field of psychology, or at least getting a degree, a master's degree in psychology, needs to know. It's the basis and the foundation of the field.
And when I always speak to graduates, they always go crazy over CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, and they all talk about how much they learn on that module. I'm thinking, oh, I should stop talking to you before you start hypnotizing me. We have a number of options, obviously, as careers. So we kind of talked about, if you're in the UK and you're following a very strict path and you want to be a clinical childhood psychologist in a particular field, then this is how you do it. But what career options are available for those that aren't intending to become practicing psychologists? And I'll go over to you, Ricardo.
Well, we psychologists, I got a degree in psychology, we psychologists are good for nothing and for everything. I mean, you have to tell me any area in your life that is not related to contact with others, which is basically psychology. So, and you need to know how people behave, the way they behave in practically every realm in your life, even in personal life. You might be working, I don't know, in any sort of company. You will still have to deal with people, with customers, with your supervisors, with your supervisees, with everyone. So psychology, in that sense, is practically useful for everything. Now, that said, if you want to make a career in psychology out of the UK, for example, you might find that our program might be sufficient for you to work as a psychologist in your own country. That really depends on the countries, that really depends on where you are. So we advise everyone to specifically check the requirements in their own context. That said, again, you might use psychology if you want, for example, to get a better job in a marketing company, or if you want to deal with teams of work, or practically with everything. And again, as you know, having a master's from a top university in the world is a badge of quality in your CV, no matter to where you are applying to.
I think that's really interesting. I was talking earlier with Alina about my dissertation. So, you know, my area is marketing, and I want to look at consumer behavior in relation to making difficult purchases, such as an online degree. It's a high commitment purchase, and I want to look at how social media affects people's buying decisions and their behavior and their relationship to brands that sell these products. And Alina said to me, that could have been a psychology dissertation as much as it is a business dissertation.
Very well could be.
So I think that's an interesting point, that psychology is in every single degree that we offer. So the scope of psychology is just absolutely ridiculous, and that brings us on to research. Alina, we often have sessions regarding our dissertation process. Can you just highlight what that is and what kind of commitment students will have to make towards the end of their program, and maybe showcase some of the students or the work that you've been involved with as a supervisor of dissertations?
Sure. So at the MSc in psychology, it culminates in the dissertation. So the dissertation is basically the student's independent study, where they design a full research study, carry it through, do the analysis, and complete the write-up. It's a graded component of the program and accounts for, I believe it's, Ricardo, 60 credits? How many credits is the dissertation?
60, that's correct. 1/3 of the credits in the whole.
Exactly. And so it's a 9-month commitment. So once the student finishes all the core modules that we went through a couple slides ago, you go into the research methods training module. Okay, and this is the start of the dissertation for the psychology student. It signals the start of the dissertation. In this particular module, which is ungraded, it's not a graded component, but it is required, the student works with a general dissertation instructor to put together a proposal. So the dissertation proposal is the first step in the dissertation process. So they come out of there with a DA, a dissertation advisor, who will guide and support the student throughout the process. Okay, so that doesn't mean that the dissertation advisor does the dissertation with the student. Right, the student will be responsible fully for the dissertation, and that we'll have the support of the DA in the background.
Cool.
So once the proposal is approved, you come out of the research methods module, you go with your DA, continue to work on the proposal. Once you gain approval, which should be around 8 weeks after the start of the research methods training module, then you go into the ethics process. Every study that a student is going to do in the dissertation will require ethical approval, whether it's expedited or full. But every single study, even if it's a systematic review, will require ethics approval. Once ethics approval is confirmed, then the student will move on to recruitment and data collection. Okay, and that can usually take up a significant amount of time during the dissertation. And at that point, the student is really out there pretty much on their own, collecting their data, gathering participants, recruiting participants, and the DA is in the background, supporting the student as needed. But during that time, for the most part, the student is out there on their own. Once data is completed, the data collection is completed, then there's the analysis phase, where the student either will analyze their data in qualitative methodology, depending on the design of their dissertation, or quantitative methodology, meaning statistics, and the write-up begins. Well, the write-up can actually begin during the ethical approval process. So the student can really take advantage of time waiting for approvals and reviews by doing the first couple chapters, so the introduction and the literature review, right? So that's a big component, which together account for about 25%, almost 30% of the dissertation mark. So they could really get ahead by, doing those earlier chapters. And then finally, when everything is completed, the dissertation is submitted for assessment. Now, the DA will help the students by reviewing every draft chapter and the completed draft and providing feedback on how to improve and some of the strengths, some other areas that perhaps the student didn't focus too much on that they should. So a lot of guidance will be provided by the DA throughout the process, so the student really has the best opportunity to succeed with the dissertation. At the end, once submitted, it will be assessed by 2 markers. And perhaps a third, depending on what grades are given by the 2 assessors, and then will end up culminating their degree at that point.
I feel my heart rate rising as you discuss the next 9 months of my life.
It's a long process. It is a commitment, but highly rewarding once you're done, because then you have your degree, and really you come out of it. Ideally you go into this as a student looking at a topic you're interested in, something that really grasps your attention. I'll give you some examples of some of the student studies that I've supervised. I'm currently supervising a study of a student looking at interpersonal violence and how that affects mental health, right? So when I say interpersonal violence or intimate partner violence, it's basically domestic violence and how that impacts one's mental health, women in particular, so gender attitudes and how they feel about themselves. I've also supervised topics that, like we were speaking earlier, Joe, about more related to business. So consumer behavior and how certain brands or high visible brands contribute to buying behaviors, and whether that impacts, whether we buy from this company or that company if we recognize a brand. I've also supervised things that are related to just, mental health disorders. So for instance, how does boredom impact aggressive behavior or the manifestation of aggression? So I mean, those are just the wide array of different studies that I've supervised, but they're all really interesting, and much like in the classroom where you're learning from the students, I learned so much from my students and the different topics that they bring. A clinical psychologist, you're pretty broad in your knowledge, and even still, a lot of the topics that the students come with, wow, that's so interesting, and you get to read up on the current research and helping students understand, the theoretical basis of their topics, and just really watching how the studies flourish and how the students themselves learn throughout the process and become researchers, honestly. So it's quite a rewarding process for me as well as a DA.
You have said something important here. They become researchers. I mean, we don't offer our programs as a high school for older people. This is not a place where you sit down, read, and do an exam. We don't have exams in our program at all, not a single exam. Students have to learn critically, have to become professionals of critically thoughts. So they must be able to analyze reality, and at the end to prove that they are able to do that by conducting a piece of research, a huge, big piece of research that is a unique contribution to knowledge in the area. So students are not just buying a paper to put on the wall. They are contributing actively to knowledge in the area. And I think that's a unique contribution of students to research and to knowledge.
Yes, thank you for that. I mean, this is really the difference between, if those want to understand what having a postgraduate mindset is, what the difference between postgraduate study and undergraduate study
Absolutely.
is the word research, is finding gaps in the research, solving organizational problems based on theoretical constructs. This is exactly why you do a master's degree. And you can see in the background here the glass slipper effect. One of our students, our graduate Sabrina Spangel from Denmark, she had a very big piece of research last year about women breaking through into management positions in Denmark, and she went all around the country, TV and everything, discussing this piece of work, and it turned out to be quite a big piece of work. So there's that opportunity there for all of you to look at that research project as an option to specialize in something, become an expert in something, and maybe you can be a consultant in that area because you have that depth of knowledge because you've gone and studied and lived that for 9 months. So
Yeah, and importantly, we encourage all students to conduct their research as far as possible in their own context, in their own country, in their own type of companies, in their own society, so they not only get a paper to put in their CV, as I said, but they contribute to the development of their own society, of their own country, and I think that's an important asset for all of us.
Okay, so thank you very much. So we've looked through that dissertation process here, from research, topic or proposition through to conceptualization, research, which is qualitative or quantitative that you have to do, analyze those findings, work with your DA how to present them, chapters back and forth until it reaches a conclusion, and that is 6 to 9 month process. We also have options to do that research, as Ricardo said, on a specific subject area, country, industry specific to you, so you can look at that niche and really explore some answers, some ways forward in how you can tackle common issues. So we have an option here. It's one of our fantastic doctoral graduates, David Tuku, sitting and looking at over Liverpool as he graduated. We have an option to ask the good doctor some questions now. We have a few that have come in. Thank you very much, Michael, for sending these questions to us, and we're going to go through them. I haven't looked at them, so we'll divide them together, guys, okay? Will the Liverpool MSc in psychology allow me to enter further training in any field of psychology in the future? In other words, would it enable me to enter into further study in, for example, forensic psychology or another specialization in order to become a practicing psychologist in the field? Ricardo, I'll ask you this because we were going through some of this together.
The answer is very easy. Yes. Big yes. I mean, that's exactly the purpose of this program. So, yes.
So, perfect. So
simple as that. As soon as you complete this program, you have already completed the first step in these 2 tiers accreditation programs process, and so you can join, as you just said, a specific program in forensic psychology, or in sports psychology, or in clinical psychology, or organizational psychology, or any sort of psychology.
Nice.
So yes.
Perfect. So yeah, so that means that you can go on and do your masters in that specialization, like we're showing on the chart before. Can the dissertation, I'll ask you, Alina, can the dissertation be submitted as a journal publication? So can our students get published, essentially?
Yes, they can. First, they would complete the process for their degree, so they would submit their dissertation, have it assessed. Once the grade is confirmed, oftentimes DAs, and I can use myself, for instance, as an example, help students get published. So we publish together. So I often guide students to particular journals that might be of interest to their topic. Go through the manuscript submission process and review. There is editing involved of the dissertation. You wouldn't submit a 100-page article, for instance, to a journal. But we go through that process together, and it's a collaborative process. And at the end, it's quite fun because we both get published, together. So
that's really cool
to do that. And often that actually happens after graduation. So we stay in touch.
See, I'll cross my fingers that I can write in a way that's interesting enough for people to read it in a journal article, and then you're kind of there. Once you've done that, you're in the legacy, you're in the pantheon. People are going to be citing and referencing your work forever. I had a conversation with someone who was studying on our public health program, who came from technology background. He was designing applications that helped with people finding Ebola cases, and he published that work. Because it was a great piece of work, and then I found myself in a different module in my MBA, citing and referencing a fellow student who I spoke to, and so I emailed him after and told him, "Hey, you're semi-famous in the academic world now, so all of our students have that opportunity as well."
Sure.
So, how suited is this MSc to people who are working full-time and have families? Is the load structured? Oh, that's a good question. Is the load structured according to very specific, very stringent deadlines, or does the student have set periods to work, say overall a one-off deadline? So I think we should go through some of that kind of working typical week, Alina. So what's a typical week for a student in terms of the expectations of the workload and the kind of flexible things and the non-flexible things that they have to do in that week?
I'll start with the non-flexible. There are deadlines. So every assignment has a specific due date that must be met. And hence, so that part is not flexible. However, What is flexible is the ability to work in an asynchronous mode. So most of I'll give you the typical structure of the modules, we'll have 2-week discussions. So perhaps 2 to 3, maybe 4 discussions during the 8-week period that are 2 weeks in length. So the initial post will be due, for instance, at the end of the first week of that 2-week discussion period. So they have a full week to read, devise their post, develop the discussion answer, and then post that. And then on the second week, the student focuses on participation, so responding to their peers and engaging in that discussion. Again, they don't have to do it at a particular time of the day. They could do it at 3 a.m. if that's what works best for them. But it must be posted by day 7 of the week, for instance. So that part is flexible. Everything in the classroom as well is open from the beginning, so the student can go in and look at, okay, what are the assignments, when is everything due, and what are the major assignments. So, there might be a final project in a module that requires quite a bit of work, but the student has 8 weeks to really put that together and structure their time accordingly, so that by the end of the module, they can submit that project by the due date. The same with written assignments. Perhaps there's a couple of essays that are in a particular module. That's usually there's about 2 to 3 discussions, 2-week periods, a couple of essays, 1 or 2 essays, and then a major project at the end. And again, students get either a full week, a full 2 weeks to really focus on that particular assignment. So the due dates are not flexible, but the way in which the student structures their time is.
Yeah, you can choose when you want to read and generally reply to people within that 5 days. But when you have a major assignment, you have to deliver it before midnight on that day.
Right.
Yeah. You have to think that we have about 10,000 online students, and the vast majority of them are mature students with family and work commitments. And the vast majority of them can do both things at the same time, of all of these things at the same time, which doesn't mean that it's easy, or it's just 10 minutes a day. If that's your idea, forget about this. You have to work hard, but you can do it.
Exactly. So I have a question about the application process. So I think I'll take that one. So as a student at the University of Waterloo, I was wondering, how does the application process work? And you guys can help me with this if there's anything I'm missing out. Now, the application process is I believe, is a 3-tier process where you put a motivational statement in. It's like you're applying for a job. Your work experience, which you detail, and you leave no detail behind. You put your best foot forward. And your educational background. Now, many of our students haven't studied for a while because they're adults and they've already had years of experience in the industry. Some students have studied recently or not at all. So we have completely different backgrounds depending on our candidates. So no background will prize you out of not being a student, but we'd have to look and assess your experience in the industry, look and assess your qualifications and your particular goals and motivation. Alina, do you have any tips for anyone going through that process in terms of what they need to do? What are you expecting to see?
I touched upon that at the start, which is really put your best foot forward. So even if you think a tidbit of information about your background is not relevant, put it in. Right, especially about your experience, your prior education, what you did, your interests, why you want to study psychology in particular, and what your plan is for once you do get into the program. What is your plan? How are you going to structure your time? How are you going to ensure success?
Exactly.
I think that's really important.
Yeah, it is important to remark that as required by the British Psychological Society, you must have a bachelor's degree to join this specific program. If you don't have a bachelor's degree, you cannot join this program, or a degree or a similar degree in your country, you cannot join this program. That said, you can still join other programs in psychology that we are presently offering. I mean, you might not have a bachelor's degree, but you might be an experienced team leader in a factory with, let's say, a middle management position for the last 10 years. That and depending on your academic background, might allow you, for example, to join the Masters in Organizational and Business Psychology. Same as if you don't have a degree in whatever, but still you have some sort of professional qualification as a nurse, and you are working in hospitals for a time, you might apply for the Masters in Mental Health Psychology. But for this specific program, the only real critical requirement is that you need to have a bachelor's degree.
There you go. So yeah, the bachelor's degree is the requirement there. So
let's have a look at. It doesn't have to be in psychology. So you can come from, different with that bachelor's degree and go through the accredited program.
So I could have my degree in drama, my undergraduate degree in drama. Then I could do. I've been a manager. I've got the undergraduate degree in drama. I can then go and do your masters, and then I can then specialize on a specialized masters in sports psychology. Say that's what I wanted to do.
That's a very nice summary.
Okay, there you go. So yeah, that's something that we're hammering home today, because it's can get quite confusing how you make that path. It's very important when you're making this decision, if that's the path that you want to go on, that you're picking the right degree, because it's a big commitment. I have a really cool question for you, Ricardo. I live in South Korea, where gaming addiction is a big problem. Would this be a good dissertation topic for me? How would you go about researching this? For example, could I conduct maybe direct research, such as doing a survey on how many hours local school children are playing phone or computer games?
Cool. I mean, we would need kind of something like 10 hours to discuss this online right now. I mean,
wait for our webinar next week.
Oh yeah, but this is a very hot topic, and of course that would be a very, very, very nice dissertation. We might have to argue whether you can access children, for example, because these are ethical, sensitive issues, and we should discuss that before. But without entering into details, yes, of course, that's a very, very, very interesting area, and I would love to see this person joining our program and doing their dissertation in this.
Exactly. So we have a few other questions. A standard question that I get in most webinars is how many hours work per week on average. I'm a student on the program. We have the QAA, which we discussed at the beginning. That's a quality assurance group that looks at all universities in the UK. Now, they say that 10 credits means 10 working hours. So sorry, 1 credit means 10 working hours. So each module is 15 credits. That's 150 hours divided by about 8 weeks. It's about 19 hours by the Quality Assurance Association. Now, will it take you 19 hours? It depends, doesn't it? Depends on how interested you are in a specific subject, how your English might be. If you're not native English speaker necessarily, you might take a bit longer. You might want to translate some of those words, or might want to look at some of those verbs, for example. Might take slightly longer to read. If you're native English like myself, you might find it slightly easier to skim read, for example. I take probably around 15 hours a week, give or take, but when I reach my final module project, I'm moving up to sometimes up to 30 hours, 20, 30. So it does really depend on who you are, what you're doing. If you want to achieve the top grades all the time, if you're absolutely committed to doing that, then the more you research, the more you study, as you know in life, the more successful you'll be. It's exactly like Da Vinci's 10,000 working hours to get good at anything in life. So it's no different with your studies. So that's how long it can take you. It can vary depending on your commitment, interest, and your English as well. So there you go.
It also can vary, Joseph, depending on the week in a given module. So some weeks in a given module, you're not going to have an assignment. What you're expected to do is read and prepare and get started. And so it really depends on how the student structures their time. Some students may feel, okay, I'm going to put in 40 hours this week because the week prior I have some work commitment and I really can't dedicate the time I need to. There's nothing in particular that's assigned, so they might wait to the second week to do things. Not that I recommend this, but this is the part of the flexibility where students can kind of structure their time. Perhaps they put their time into one given week instead of another, if the module allows for that, depending on when assignments are due.
Also, you have a couple of weeks of break between one module and the next. You can relax in those 2 weeks. Or you can even apply for a delay, for a suspension of your studies for a given time. So you might end up one module, say, okay, I need a break now, I need 3 or 4 months to relax. So you can do that. You don't need to take one module and then the next and then the next. As far as you complete the whole program in 6 years, you have plenty of time to take as many breaks as you need.
And that gets rid of my next question. How long do you have to complete the MSc? So wonderful there. My wife had a baby, and I took 2-3 months off the course and then came back so I could spend some time with my son. That was no problem, and come back to work. What we have here is a fantastic student support system, actually. We didn't talk about it today, but we're one of the most established online programs, one of the largest bodies of students studying online, the hugest alumni sets, and that comes with, for every student, a student support manager, and they're there to kind of hold your hand throughout the program. So if you have any issues or any problems with or challenges that you're having along the way, they don't have to be just policy challenges or work challenges. You could find it overwhelming or what have you, and that's the person you speak to. You speak to your student support manager who can kind of guide you through that process, help you if you needed to take a break or you needed to communicate to an instructor and you didn't know how to do that. Then that student support manager is there for you, just like the enrollment advisor is there for you now at the beginning to help you make an informed decision, to help you with your application process. If you don't have an enrollment advisor, you'll need to get one of those if you want to think seriously about this program and what you need to do to qualify for it. So thank you very much.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be a big issue. You might have just catch a cold, or break a leg, or have a family issue, or whatever. And of course,
traveling, no internet. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there are set procedures for that, and we understand that each one needs a flexibility to work online. But as you said, the maximum amount of time you can spend in the program is 6 years. But if you follow a regular path, as most people do, count with about 3 years.
About 3 years. So yeah, that's about right for me. I'm going to finish it in 2.5 to 3 years. So that's all the questions that we've had for today as we reach the hour mark. Very timely presentation indeed. A big part of the psychology of being a student as well is if you study with a friend, then you start to get a bit competitive, and your grades will be better, and you have a far higher pass rate. If you're studying with someone else, so that is an option that you do have. It's called our Recommend a Friend program. A lot of our students are actually studying with their colleagues or other friends, and in some cases their employer are contributing towards that. So go and find out if that's something that is suitable for you, and that is an option. And if you are interested in that option, speak to us about it, and we'll look to facilitate that. So thank you very, very much, Dr. Perez. Thank you very, very much, Dr. Tejeiro as well, for your contributions today. There's quite a lot to get your teeth into, so it's important now that students go back and they do their research on whether this is the right program for them. As we set out the 72 institutions, there's only one that's ticking all those boxes. So we look forward to seeing a lot of you guys in class. Thank you very much today for both of you. I'll leave with Dr. Perez. I'd like to get you to give the students, if you had one piece of advice to give the students who are considering taking this program and what they needed to think about, what would that be?
Are you excited about psychology? So is psychology something that you've always wanted to get into? Is it something you really want to get into now? And if it is, then we are likely the right path for you.
Exactly. So I'm very excited in psychology. I'm also extremely excited that we're now offering the gold standard BPS accreditation. We've just told you what it means for you. If you want to know more about that, contact us and we'll have longer discussions about why the BPS accreditation will help you get to where you need to go alongside our wonderful psychology program. So thank you very much to both of you. My name is Joe O'Brien. It's been a University of Liverpool online webinar. You'll be sent the recording to this webinar if there are bits that you've missed, so you can watch that in your free time. I'd all wish you good luck in class, but if you're prepared, you won't need any luck at all. So thank you very much and good night to all of you. Goodbye.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.